Hi, my name is Mike Bohley. I grew up in Canal Fulton, attended Manchester High School. In high school, when I was a senior, I started dating my wife at the time. Together, I was a year older. We both attended the University of Akron. Of course, I majored in education. She majored in business. We now live and reside in Greene, so Uniontown, on the other side of Manchester, about 25 minutes away. We have two children. Brock is 13, so if you do attend a football game, he's been my ball boy since 2017, so now he's 13. And then Lucy, normally, if you attend any football game, she runs up to me after the game. She's 9. She is heavily involved in dance, cheer, anything performing arts-wise. He is a soccer player in the 8th grade, so he's in 8th grade and she's in 3rd grade. 2 dogs, a Scottish Terrier, and a Golden Labradoodle that I purchased from Coach Schrock about 7 years ago. So that is my family makeup. This is year 10 for me at Chippewa. I've been the head high school football coach since 2013. Kind of taught a wide variety of history classes, from American history to world history to psychology, AP Psych, AP Euro. And then last year I took over as athletic director. The best thing about our district and our community is the close-knit fabric that it's built on. Whether that's Rogues Hollow Parade, which I fell in love with my first year here. I never experienced anything like it, never grew up in a community like it. Get on a float and all of Doylestown is lined up and down Portage. That weekend has always been so important to me because everybody comes out of the woodworks. And then you see it on Friday nights, and you see it on Friday nights in a basketball gym in the winter. Our volleyball team is having a tremendous amount of success right now, so our student section is crazy. There was an abundance of them last night at Smithville. So it's a community like many other Wayne County communities that rallies around itself and is close-knit and loyal to their schools and loyal to their kids. From a WCAL standpoint, our community doesn't necessarily have the private funding that a Norwayne does or a Dalton does. We make the most out of what we have, and we have a very prideful community that gives and provides generously from private donations, whether it's sponsorships or banners or naming rights. We have a turf field that was constructed a couple years ago that everybody and anybody has access to using. We've had alumni marching bands. We have a literacy night that our elementary school is taking part in next week that they started last year. Our youth organizations use it religiously. Our marching band's on it, like I said, religiously. Our high school and middle school athletic teams are on it. Essentially, it is continuously used, and when that was created and put in place and practice, that was the goal. That was the concept, is to get the most amount of use out of it, and that's where we're at. In the 10 years I was here, in past regimes, we struggled finding, quite frankly, practice facilities. Before we overhauled, as a district, the baseball complex and put new drainage in. I remember my first 3 years practicing alongside the boys and girls soccer team in the outfield of the baseball field. So then when it came springtime, it was patchy, to say the least. It wasn't an adequate practice facility for either soccer program or our football program. One time they had us practice behind CIS, which was a 40-yard field lined in briar bushes and overgrown, shrubs. Our band never really had a place to practice. So by necessity more than anything, and that doesn't even count, quite frankly, the competition of the playing surface. The drainage that was put in years ago, well before I was ever in the district, kind of was dissipating and breaking down, and everything funneled towards the park. So we'd play a Friday night football game or a soccer game in which we would talk like serious conversations of moving the venue, because it would quite frankly, be a swamp in the back corner of the end zone on the opposite side, where you had standing water. Difficulty to line it, difficulty to mow it. In 1999, which again, I was in high school, the playing surface was so bad they moved their playoff game to Worcester against Martins Ferry. So not only did it open up avenues and opportunities for all our kids and all our sports teams and band and youth organizations to use, quite frankly, it was getting to a point where it was a disadvantage for our kids. We are putting a new softball field in, but some would argue that land's been for sale. I'm not quite sure where our softball team would play if that land sold, and we can't play 26 games away, and then you deal with travel expenses and cost of busing and things of that nature, and again, putting our children and our kids at a disadvantage as mom and dad are going all over the county to watch them play 26 softball games. So that was the thought, and it was long overdue to revamp the softball field, and that is currently under construction. Our weight room, because when we went to a 7-12 complex up here, they put a weight room in downstairs, and to be completely transparent and honest, it's half the size of our old weight room at CIS. So yes, is it new equipment? Sure, because the equipment at the old CIS building was literally in 1980, and you were starting to get to a point where cables were breaking and putting kids at risk of getting, from a liability standpoint, dumbbells breaking and putting them in danger. So from a safety standpoint, and again, we have to have a weight facility on site, and this is our new site. So baseball, they put drainage in because, again, we had 4 or 5 teams practicing in the baseball outfield, thus destroying that, so it needed reseeded. The stadium has already kind of been hit on. In our performing arts, I've taken my kids to musicals and fall plays. That's a state-of-the-art facility that we have down there. And I think if you brought Shauna Knight in, she would probably say the same thing. She does an outstanding job with our theater and arts program. Our band and choir department has state-of-the-art equipment down there. So again, I don't view it necessarily as a betterment of the athletic facilities, or they're getting more piece of the pie than other programs. I think if you look at the full encompassing object of making the best opportunity as a well-rounded student, athlete, or whatever the child's interested in, I think that's what the goal of any school district is, and I think that's what we're trying to accomplish, whether they're into the arts or into the athletics or into the academics. If you look at our STEM programs, if you look at our robotics programs, we're just trying to provide a well-rounded opportunity for our kids. Our school, we've been very fortunate that because of our community and our roots and our fibers and our makeup that kind of make it up, we've been able to kind of sidestep or not have to do or implement the pay to play. That should be always the goal if you're self-sufficient enough and you don't have to tax your community members, obviously your parents, your families, your kids, and we've been able to do that up to this point, which is a blessing, because at the end of the day, participation universally has decreased, and with pay to play, normally kind of the data suggests that your participation numbers drop a little bit. So again, very, very fortunate in our community where we have our kids and our community members, and obviously where I work, that we haven't had to implement that yet. Unfortunately, I lived it my first coaching job in Portage County. When I got into education out of college, it started at $150 due to failures of levies. It ended up crescendoing to $350 per kid. We were able to fundraise. We did a mulch fundraiser to kind of offset some of that cost. But again, to be completely transparent, $350 per kid per sport, no cap, was debilitating to say the least. So I think it's a fine line. Again, our economy in the United States isn't exactly getting better. So when you talk about fuel costs and transportation costs and officials, Northeast Ohio, up in Cleveland, there was a threat of a boycott because they weren't getting compensated what they felt was fair. So officiating costs are rising, equipment costs are rising. We're still coming out of COVID where everything is backlogged and backdated. And It's still difficult to find equipment. Again, just speaking from a football standpoint, you had multiple high schools that couldn't play week 1 through 3 because they couldn't get helmets in on time. So costs are rising. So yes, pay to play or pay to participate, however you want to coin it. It's been around for 15, 20 years, but more and more schools are implementing it, whether it's a $50 cost, whether it's a $100 cost, and depending on the district or the vicinity or makeup, the socioeconomic status of that district, it could be upwards of $500 per kid. So it's a real conversation. It's a fair conversation.